I saw a comment on a video on our channel, and it basically said that someone found their car was more economical when they switched it into sport mode. So is that true? Are cars more economical when you switch them into sport mode? Well, there's actually a lot of things going on. So we're going to discuss this. I've got a few friends of mine that have tried it out on various different cars and engines. And in the main, it's actually true. Sport mode does generally provide better fuel economy. But there's a big caveat that we need to bear in mind if we want better fuel economy from sport mode. So let's just look at what's going on inside the car when we engage sport mode. And there's a couple of areas. We've got sport mode on the gearbox. A lot of gearboxes come with a conventional drive and a sport mode. A lot of cars now in the dashboard display have an eco mode, a regular or normal mode, and a sport mode that can be selected. So we're just going to discuss what they're actually doing to the car as we drive it. So selecting sport mode on the gearbox. Now there's so many different types of gearbox out there. I can only really speak very generally in this video, and please let me know in the comments what your experiences are and what your technical take is on that subject of sport mode on gearboxes. But generally sport mode will change the shift points. It will hang on to the RPM for longer periods than you might otherwise do. In some gearboxes it's scaled according to the amount of throttle you're putting in. Some gearboxes have a kick down mode, and if you press the throttle fully down it'll kick down a gear automatically. But the sport mode generally is altering those shift points. The RPM will be higher when it changes gear to keep you in the power band, and that really is the key to getting better fuel economy from your car. So if you use sport mode and you drive the cars sportily or aggressively, you're not going to get better fuel economy. That is just never going to happen. But we're exploiting the power band of the car. We're using the more efficient part of the power band. Now it will vary considerably depending on the shift points that the manufacturer's designed and the actual power band or the torque band or the BMEP of the engine actually concerns. So you may have different experiences with this. So within the car, acceleration is something that costs you fuel. Changing the speed of the car will use more fuel than maintaining a constant speed. So in economy mode, you tend to have to accelerate for longer to reach the velocity that you want to be at. Whereas in sport mode, everything happens much quickly. So you'll be accelerating over a shorter distance, over a shorter period of time. So for a longer distance and a longer period of time, you'll be at your cruising speed. You'll be in that economical power band. Also bear in mind that the trip computer in our cars is not as accurate as people expect. If you actually brim the tank and then reset the mile counter on the dashboard, and then you drive through that tank and then you top it up again, if you measure the amount of litres that you've used or the amount of gallons you've used and the actual distance that you've covered, you get a fairly accurate picture on your MPG. So again, I'd like to challenge you to just test and see how accurate your car's computer is in terms of fuel economy. So reset the trip computer so you get an accurate reading when you next fill up. Reset the mileage and just note the amount of litres or gallons that we put back into the tank when we refuel the car, and that would be a good benchmark to go by to see how accurate our onboard car computer is. And most people find the onboard computer is slightly optimistic in terms of the fuel economy figures it quotes. But a friend of mine has got an Audi 2-litre TDI with an automatic gearbox, and he gets better fuel economy when he puts the gearbox and the car into sport mode. I have a friend with a Puma Ford ST, and he also gets better fuel economy when the car is switched into sport mode. So it's only two vehicles out there that I've been able to get any sort of meaningful stats from. We've not done laboratory controlled conditions for those experiments. It's been a general feel after a week of driving, but exclusively in sport mode compared to doing a week exclusively in drive mode. How big were the savings? Well, we're only talking about 5 to 7% better fuel economy, but that does add up over the year, so it does make a big difference. So we've spoken so far about the gearbox, but a lot of engines also have a sport mode. So we should really just talk about economy mode. What is that doing? Is that deliberately using less fuel? Well, economy mode in most cars, when that is set, it's making the adjustment to the driver for the driver. If you're an uninformed driver and you want to drive economically, eco mode will basically control your throttle inputs and the way that you're actually getting the engine to respond, effectively just slowing up the acceleration. So it's effectively hampering your performance. It's forcing the car into eco mode. Now, what happens with most drivers when they're in eco mode and they want to make swift progress is they overcompensate. They accelerate even harder than they otherwise would. And that kind of screws up the whole basis of having eco mode. So in fairness, some engines are set up in eco mode to actually burn less fuel. The maps that they use to calculate the fuel ratios and the spark and various other things going on inside the engine, if it's a turbo engine, are all toned down a little bit to improve the efficiency of the engine. But in the main, eco mode is basically a nanny that is forcing you to drive more carefully. And most informed drivers, certainly a lot of you guys watching this channel, are certainly above average drivers, and you understand what's going on in the engine. You understand the correct shift points in the actual gearbox. And just by driving it properly in sport mode, you can drive it economically in sport mode and you'll get better fuel economy than you do in eco mode. So it's a bit of a challenge really. In this video, I just want to put it out there that a lot of people are getting better fuel economy when their car is in sport mode on the dashboard, and also if they're using sport mode on an automatic gearbox. So please try it for a week or so and then come back, drop your comments, let me know your experiences. I'll be really curious to see if there's any patterns emerging, whether certain brands or certain types of engine are better in terms of fuel economy when you have the sport mode engaged. And also be honest, let me know if your driving habit changes. Do you find that in sport mode you need to drive less aggressively because the car is responding better? So I should also add that on some cars, sport mode will also make adjustments to the steering. So the steering will change from a very, very light, comfortable drive to give you more feedback from the road. Things will stiffen up a little bit on the steering, and also the suspension itself. So some cars with advanced suspension systems, you'll find the suspension is slightly more taut. It's going to give you slightly better cornering, slightly less body roll when the car is in sport mode. But none of those things actually affect fuel economy, and certainly not a measurable difference to fuel economy. But again, let me know if you've had any different experience of that. Please, could you just boot the like button? That really does help us to get out there. And if you want to get the best out of your car, subscribe to the channel. We'd hate you to miss out on the great content we've got coming up. And I've lined this video up for you and this playlist that you should find really interesting, and it'll help you to get the best out of your car. Thanks for watching. See you in this next video.